They were once just another Appalachian family. The Dobbins name doesn't carry the weight of coal barons or preachers. It doesn't echo across courthouse murals or marble gravestones. But between 1898 and 1932, the Dobbins family owned more acreage along Brown Mountain's southern slope than any other settler family. And then, like the mountain always seems to require, they disappeared. Not all at once, but in a pattern that now looks too clean to be random. They first appear in Burke County land, tax ledgers from 1898. Nathaniel Dobbins, 43 acres, Hiji. Parcel 7, Elmira Dobbins, 2 acres, tilled field dwelling, 1 structure. Unnumbered by 1907, the acreage had doubled. A second home was built, and records show a family of 8 children, all listed in that year's school enrollment for Larkspur Ridge Schoolhouse. The Dobbins were, by every paper trace, unremarkable until the papers stopped. In 1911, a fire burned down the school. The cause was ruled accidental, though 2 separate testimonies from students at the time, published only in the 1928 Appalachian Oral Recordings Project, describe a hum like bees, but deep under the dirt, followed by a flash from the tree line. No one died, but no school was ever rebuilt. The next official mention of the family appears in a 1915 death certificate for Thomas Dobbins, age 9, cause nervous collapse. Attending physician, none. Body prepared for burial, no. A single note at the bottom of the page reads, buried at home, no minister called. Mother insisted on quiet. Then the trail goes cold. Between 1916 and 1929, there are no census entries for the Dobbins family. No marriage records, no land transfers, no birth announcements, no obituaries, just silence. And then, in 1930, a single entry reappears. Wyman Dobbins, male, age 17, admitted to Morganton State Hospital. His intake notes are chilling. Recovered from a flood-damaged archive in 1972, they remain largely intact despite water warping. Under mental state on arrival, the attending physician wrote, boy arrived, mute. No visible injuries. Repeated a single phrase in writing. Only, the lights sing through the floorboards. Under family information, no mother, no father, no siblings, no visitors. Wyman died less than 1 year later. His death certificate was signed by a junior attending nurse. No doctor on file, cause of death, exhaustion, not cardiac, not starvation, just exhaustion. The Morganton State Hospital burned down in 1982. Wyman's files were among the only documents salvaged. In 1958, a property auction in Burke County unearthed a small, unmarked ledger among abandoned belongings tagged as Parcel 7B, foreclosed homestead. The auctioneer's assistant, unaware of its significance, sold it as a lot filler. It surfaced in 1999 in a box donated to the Burke County Genealogy Society. Inside, the contents were disturbing. The book was small, leather-bound, and warped. With time, on the inner cover, belonging to Elmira Dobbins, do not show the children. The entries span 1903 to 1915. The handwriting grows erratic over time, and the tone becomes desperate. May 2nd, 1904, they return on quiet nights. When Nathaniel is gone, I lock the back room. August 19th, 1906, Thomas saw them in the orchard. He hummed afterward. It isn't a song we taught him. October 1st, 1910, 3 lights over the well. I dreamt my hands were not mine. The baby won't cry. February 3rd, 1915. The ground is warm when it shouldn't be. Nathaniel says to move, but where would we go? It knows us. The final page is blank except for a single scrawled line. It lives in the light now. It waits where we're rooted. The ledger was removed from public view in 2002 after a researcher claimed she developed sudden hearing loss while reading it aloud. A formal study was never conducted. What makes the Dobbins family so chilling is not that they disappeared, but how completely they did. Local oral histories, collected from over 40 interviews between 1960 and 1985, make no mention of the name. No elder in the surrounding counties, when asked directly, recalled a family by that name on the ridge. Not a single church record from the period lists them as members, not even in death, yet their land still exists. Parcel 7B, stretching 18.6 acres, remains registered with the state. No buyer, no lien, no access road, and every 5 years a renewal appears with no sender, just a clerk's stamp and a P.O. box that leads nowhere. A single trailhead leads to the Dobbins site today. It's unnamed, unofficial. You won't find signs. But if you walk 2 miles off the ridge's southern spur, the forest opens just wide enough to see the remnants. 4 stone steps, a collapsed porch beam, and, most disturbingly, a barn frame whose timbers never rotted. A hiker in 1987 described the space as too quiet, like the woods were holding their breath. He returned the next day to record what he called residual M pulses, but his recorder malfunctioned. The tape captured only static, followed by a voice whispering. It blinked again. He never returned to the site. His journal, published posthumously, contains a sketch nearly identical to the Dobbins flame symbol found in the 1943 field notebook. In 2011, a genealogist named Darlene Kessler conducted a DNA study on Burke County families. Her findings showed an anomaly. Genetic markers from the Dobbins line appear scattered among at least 4 major surnames today, but with no common ancestor traceable after 1920. It's as if the Dobbins line fragmented, bled into the population, but left no origin. Kessler's presentation was cancelled mid-session at the Appalachian Heritage Conference after she displayed a slide titled, "The Children with No Birth Records." The conference later issued a statement claiming the cancellation was due to technical errors, and still, something lingers. In 2022, a drone operator conducting LiDAR mapping along the southern slope captured an odd thermal bloom beneath a pine-covered hill. The temperature reading peaked at 113 degrees Fahrenheit. DESPITE air temps in the low 40s. When the area was examined on foot 2 weeks later, no source could be identified, but a pattern of stones was discovered near the heat site, roughly oval, no taller than 6 inches, and arranged in a ring. Inside the ring, a rusted locket with the initials ED. The inscription inside read, "Let it glow alone." No formal investigation was opened. The Dobbins family may never have built a legacy in stone or scripture, but they left something worse, a silence that repeats, a hush that lives under floorboards and in the hollows of burned documents. Where they went is unclear, whether they were taken, erased, or simply became part of something older. That's the question the mountain won't answer. But the name remains in land ledgers, in faded pocket Bibles, in the half-formed songs children sometimes hum near the ridge. If your family Bible has a page torn near the name Dobbins, if your uncle won't talk about a field trip he took, near Timber Hollow in 8th grade. Or if you've ever found a sketch of 3 lights and didn't know where it came from, tell us, write it below, and subscribe, because the mountain forgets no one, not even the ones it takes. It was never the biggest church in the region. Mount Gilead Primitive Baptist Church sat just off a narrow fork in the Timber Hollow Trail. A whitewashed structure no wider than a boxcar, perched on uneven stone and crooked trust. The cross above. Its front door had no nails, only twine looped and fraying from decades of quiet winds. Founded in 1902, it served not a town, but a collection of ridge-dwelling families who refused to live below the tree line. Families like the Coulters, the Givens, and the Dobbins, before their name was lost. Mount Gilead never appeared in official directories. Its sermons were never printed. And yet, for nearly 80 years, its bell was heard each dusk, not on Sundays, not on holidays, but on nights when the air turned still and sweet, like wood smoke soaked in syrup. When state surveyors first logged the chapel's location in 1934, they noted its odd dimensions, 31 feet long by 13 feet wide, an inversion of the golden ratio. Inside, the pews sat in a tight circle, facing inward. The pulpit, such as it was, stood below floor level, in a dugout basin that smelled of turned soil and old iron dot. No one remembers sermons at Mount Gilead, only singing. In 1979, a pair of seminary students from Boone visited the chapel to photograph what they believed was the last standing primitive structure of its kind. One returned with a film roll so overexposed it appeared scorched. The other did not return at all. His name was Ezra Merton, and his last recorded note, scribbled inside the back cover of his theology notebook, reads, "The hymn book has no words, just shapes. I heard them without sound." The cellar door opened by itself. For decades, rumors persisted of a hidden chamber beneath the pulpit, a storage space for baptismal gowns, or perhaps communion wine. But in 1981, after a lightning strike split the bell tower and ignited the east wall, the truth came into focus. When emergency crews arrived, they found the fire had not spread, but the floor beneath the pulpit had caved in. The wood didn't burn, it had rotted from below, revealing a narrow stone stairwell descending into dark. Officials described it as a ritual storage space, though no official inventory was filed. But a volunteer firefighter, who spoke anonymously in a 1985 oral interview archived at Western Carolina University, claimed to have seen the following before being ordered out: a hand-copied Bible, with all instances of light underlined. In red Inca child's gown, hand-stitched with the words, "Let the eye pass over," a row of wooden dolls, each missing their left eye, and arranged in a circle, and, worst of all, a ledger with 19 names, each followed by the term presented: no ages, no dates, no context, just presented. The ledger has never resurfaced. The church's remains were bulldozed in early 1982 under hazard mitigation. The site is now overgrown with poison, sumac, and moss. No birds sing there. Cell reception fails within a 20-foot radius. And in winter, the snow never stays. The theology of Mount Gilead was never written, but fragments persist in whispered tradition. What Appalachian archivist Joanna Stilwell once called Bible-adjacent folklore. In 1963, she collected 11 local hymns from the Timber Hollow area. Among them, "Let the night be gentle," "Let the light be still where no cross casts shadow," the calling hymn whose lyrics, recorded in minor key, consisted only of the words, "Don't run, don't run, don't run." None of these hymns appear in any known denominational register. Stilwell's research abruptly ended in 1964 after she reportedly fell from her attic stairs. No autopsy was performed. The tape recordings of the hymns were lost during a state archive fire in 1988. But it wasn't just the music. In 1941, Eunice Coulter, age 11, was admitted to an Asheville psychiatric ward after she began fasting and speaking in reverse syllables. According to her intake report, when asked why she refused food, she wrote, "They said I must be hollow to glow." Eunice's grandmother, Lydia Coulter, was a deaconess at Mount Gilead. In a rare surviving diary entry from 1940, she wrote, "This winter the children must stay inside the circle. The mountain flares when they sing out of step. The smallest must be taken first." Eunice died in 1943. The burial location is unlisted. Her hospital file is stamped, sealed diocesan authority. Even stranger was the church's annual viewing night. Held every October 17th, families brought blankets, baskets, and children to the ridge line just after dusk. They didn't picnic. They didn't speak. They simply sat facing the tree line in total silence as the sun set behind the mountain. Some claim to have seen lights rise from the hill, small at first, then pulsing, rising, and finally passing overhead without a sound. One attendee, in 1959, a traveling preacher named Reuben Glass, noted, "The children didn't cry. The adults didn't blink. It was as if the glow pinned them down." By 1966, the ritual had stopped. No announcement, no final service. The people simply ceased gathering, and still, the remnants surface. In 2006, a hiker cutting through the former church grounds tripped over a partially unearthed wooden cross, carved not with Christ's figure, but with an eye. The iris glowed faintly under ultraviolet light. The wood tested positive for ash, pine, and an unknown compound with thermoluminescent properties. When the cross was sent to the Smithsonian for further testing, it was lost in transit. No investigation was opened. The most unsettling find, however, came in 2017, when a Burke County restorer working on a private estate uncovered a fragmented choir ledger inside the spine of a collapsed piano. Dated 1912 and attributed to Mount Gilead, the ledger listed the names of 12 children alongside strange notations, able to hum in sync, knows the return line, responds to light in sleep, eyes flare but not the soul, marked for. Second, at the bottom of the page, a single sentence in faded red ink. This time, let them remember what they saw. The rest of the ledger was destroyed by mold. The estate where it was found belonged to a descendant of the Dobbins line. There are churches meant to shelter, and then there are churches built not to praise the divine, but to bargain with it. Mount Gilead was not a place of salvation. It was a seal, a desperate, whispered song meant to keep something older at bay, or to guide it gently home. Whatever theology they followed, it did not come from Scripture. It came from what they saw, what they heard, and what they hoped the lights would not ask of them. If your grandmother's hymnal skips pages without explanation, if you've ever found a song in your head you don't remember learning, or if your family once warned you never to enter a church that faces the ridge, tell us. Let the music be remembered, and subscribe, because the hymn books may be gone, but the light still listens. They called it a mirage. They had to. On October 12, 1913, the Charlotte Observer ran a short, unassuming piece on page 4 under the title, "Mysterious Lights Plague Brown Mountain Hikers." The article, barely 4 paragraphs long, described hikers near Jonas Ridge who claimed to see shifting orbs of golden white light moving rhythmically above the treetops as if watching. The reporter didn't include names. No photographs were printed. But the final sentence remains chilling in hindsight. The group refused to walk back down until daylight, reporting that their legs trembled and their voices did not carry beyond a few feet. It might have ended there, just another whisper in the fog of mountain lore. But that same week, something far stranger made its way into state records, not by choice, but by necessity. October 14, 1913, Morganton and Cranberry Railroad incident. At 7:02 p.m., conductor Elias Ford was navigating freight engine No. 46 along the ridge-facing curve near mile marker 33. It was a clear evening. No fog, no rain, no known obstructions. His engineer, Weldon Griggs, recorded the first report, saw a shimmer just past the bend about 10 feet off the ground, moving left to right, not fire, not reflection, looked like it knew we were coming. Ford pulled. The emergency brake. The engine didn't respond. Then the light moved. It passed directly in front of the engine, lingered for nearly 6 seconds, then shot vertically into the sky, high enough that it interfered with a telegraph line, sending what railroad loggers called a light pulse through every nearby station. The engine finally stopped 17 minutes later, not by brake, but from complete power failure. The logs show 3 entries: 7:02 p.m., light sighted 7:04 p.m., telegraph failure 7:19 p.m., engine dead. No mechanical cause was ever identified. Griggs refused to work on mountain routes after that. He left the railroad within the month. The railroad incident forced local officials to take notice, but rather than investigate, they sought to explain. In 1916, the U.S. Weather Bureau deployed a small team to Brown Mountain for a 10-day observation. The final report concluded atmospheric lensing caused by temperature inversion, likely reflecting distant lanterns or brush fires. But nowhere in the report is the engine failure mentioned, nor the 6 telegraph outages that followed, nor the handwritten margin note on page 11, which reads, "One of the team woke, screaming at 3:07 a.m., said the trees were full of watchers, refused to return." That note is not signed. More reports followed, too many to ignore, too specific to dismiss. September 3, 1921, Reverend Alton Thayer of the Church of Christ in Morganton wrote to the North Carolina State Council requesting protection for his congregation. His letter begins, "We do not seek confrontation, only peace. But the children are seeing things that don't leave their minds." He continues, "3 of our youth wandered near the ridge during evening prayer. They returned mute. All 3 drew the same symbol in the dirt, an eye over a flame, encircled by 7 marks. The council never replied. Thayer left the church in 1922 and relocated to Georgia. His final sermon was titled, The Eye Above the Altar. In 1922, with growing public unease, the U.S. Geological Survey mounted its most comprehensive study of Brown Mountain to date. The lead investigator, Dr. Silas Moran, brought magnetometers, atmospheric sensors, and for graduate researchers, his conclusion, no evidence of unnatural light source, likely misidentified fireflies, distant lamps, or swamp gas, but internal. Correspondence between Moran and the Bureau's director, unearthed through a FOIA request in 2009, paints a different picture. In a memo dated November 4, 1922, Moran wrote, I've never seen fireflies stand still in the air for 20 minutes, nor drift against the wind, nor pulse in perfect triadic rhythm. His report was classified under Archive 17D, the same designation used in later nuclear test studies. 2 of his graduate students left the program. One was admitted to a sanatorium in Ohio. The other went missing near Blue Ridge Parkway in 1924. No body was found. It wasn't just professionals. Rail workers, school teachers, store clerks, and shepherds all began to murmur, not about the lights themselves, but about what followed. A pattern emerged. A light was seen, a child began humming. A parent forgot where they lived. Dan Animal was born still. But with eyes wide open, these were not dramatic possessions. No screams, no blood, just rearrangements of memory and voice, as though reality bent around something soft and silent that had passed through. 1937. Diary from a Mother in Jonas Ridge Records. My baby won't blink anymore. He just watches the window at night and hums. It isn't a tune, I know. It doesn't feel like a lullaby. Still, every official outlet continued to call it a trick of the light, until one event finally made that impossible. June 12, 1946, Timber Hollow School, incident: 6 students, all under age 10, were found locked inside a closet by their teacher. They had stuffed pages from their readers into their mouths. Each child had drawn the same 3-ringed eye on their desk in chalk before hiding. The teacher, Miss Ruth Ingram, claimed she had no memory of placing them there. The children spoke of a light that filled the room and told them it only wants silence. School records were sealed. Miss Ingram resigned. The schoolhouse burned down 5 months later. The cause was never determined. If there's a theme to these encounters, it isn't terror, it's unwilling reverence. The lights come and people yield, not out of belief, but because something inside them recognizes the shape, the pulse, the heedless glow. Not all witnesses fled. Some stared back too long, and when they did, things changed. In a 1953 field recording, local farmer Ezra Ballantine described watching a light drift near his cattle pasture. It weren't a ghost. Ghosts got stories. This had none. It just watched. And I felt like I'd already met it. Years ago, in a dream I forgot until that night. He paused, then added, "You don't pray to it. You just hope it forgets your name. They still call it a mirage, because the alternative is worse. A mirage doesn't wait for generations. It doesn't rearrange your children's songs. It doesn't show up on film or in birth ledgers or in the margins of books written before light bulbs existed. But the Brown Mountain Lights do, and they don't ask to be explained. They only ask that you look once, long enough. Then close your eyes and try not to hum. If your great-grandfather ever described a glow that didn't cast shadows, if your family's hymn book skips a verse no one sings, or if your child once stared at the window and said it's back again, without blinking, tell us. Write it below. And subscribe, because sometimes the light doesn't want to be seen. It wants to be known. Her name was Mary Ann Hobbins, and for exactly 3 days, her name returned to the records that Brown Mountain always tries to erase. She was 11 years old, a quiet child, known for sketching birds with wings too large for their bodies and humming tunes no one recognized. On March 1st, 1961, she disappeared while walking home from Timber Hollow's one-room schoolhouse. Her mother reported her missing that evening. The sheriff's search team arrived within 12 hours, expecting a simple recovery. She wasn't the first child to wander near the ridge, but she was the only one to come back. On March 3rd, Marianne was found crouched beneath a bramble tunnel roughly 200 feet off the main hiking path. Clothes intact, feet bare, lips unchapped. She was clean, untouched, but her eyes were swollen. Red, not from crying, the nurse said, but from not blinking. She didn't speak for 12 hours. Then, in a moment of eerie calm, she looked up at the nurse attending to her IV drip and said, "The lights don't talk with mouths, they hum. Through the trees, you don't hear them with ears." The nurse assumed it was exhaustion-induced, but Marianne continued. She drew a shape on her bedsheet, 3 rings inside a triangle, and whispered, "This is where it comes through." Doctors diagnosed her with traumatic fugue, but the attending physician, Dr. Walter Cray, wasn't convinced. In a private note found years later among his estate papers, he wrote, "Her language is coherent, her memory intact, but she speaks in half-poems, like she's describing a place that doesn't use time the way we do." Hospital transcripts record only fragments. "It was daytime, but blue. I saw my brother, but he had no feet. They don't like noise. The mountain opened like a mouth, and I fell inside it, but up." There is no record of Marianne having a brother. There is no record of her family ever living on Timber Hollow Ridge. There is no family photo that includes her. Yet every file from school admissions to hospital intake list her name, her mother's name, Sarah Hobbins, and her date of birth, October 12, 1949, the same date as the 1913 railroad incident. Coincidence? Perhaps. But it doesn't stop there. On the night of March 4th, the nurse on duty heard, humming soft, high-pitched, and unplaceable. It didn't come from Marianne. It came from the ventilation duct above her bed. Security footage, when reviewed later, shows a 4-minute blackout. No movement, no noise, no static, just absence. When the lights returned, Marianne's bed was empty. No alarms were triggered, no windows were broken. The hallway cameras recorded no exit. Her fall was disconnected with surgical precision. Her sketches, previously taped to the wall, birds, rings, eyes, were gone. In their place, a single childlike phrase written on the bedsheet in red ink. She blinked too late. The hospital launched an internal investigation. Nothing was found. But the hospital chaplain at the time, Reverend Amos Clay, gave a sermon 3 days later titled, "The Silence That Shines." According to transcripts saved by an attending, Nurse Clay told the congregation, "The light is not kind or cruel. It is only old, older than our names, older than our mouths. Do not chase the hum, do not stare at the glow. And if it sings your name, do not sing back." He left the church that same week and moved to South Carolina. His forwarding address was invalid. No further sermons were published under his name. In 1997, a construction crew clearing the old hospital wing unearthed a steel box wedged behind a crumbling support beam. Inside, a faded photograph of a girl in a smock, standing on a dirt path, with no feet visible beneath her shadowy crayon drawing of concentric rings wrapped in Fire cassette tape labeled, "For those who don't remember the tape." Now degraded, plays 5 seconds of silence, followed by a single, sustained note, a tone between C, hash, and D, slightly warped, yet strangely warm. Sound engineers who examined it in 2008 noted, "The frequency is natural, but the decay pattern is inverted. It gets louder the longer it plays. There is no explanation. The The girl in the photograph is widely believed to be Marianne. But facial comparison technology yields only partial matches, as if the features don't align with existing datasets, as if her face only almost existed. She isn't the only one. In 1942, 10 years earlier, a girl named Evelyn Coulter was pulled from the Jonas Ridge Trail by a search party after being missing for 5 days. When questioned, she said she'd been in a room made of breath, where the air shimmered like water but wasn't wet. Her records were sealed. She never attended school again. Her grave marker, located in the Coulter family plot, reads, "Returned, not lost." The stone is unusually warm in winter and in summer, covered in dew, even when the air is dry. What links Marianne to Evelyn and Evelyn to others before her is not just location, it's language. They all spoke in the same rhythm. They all described a place below the roots but above the sky, and they all vanished, or died, or fell silent. In 1972, folklorist Dr. Michael England interviewed 17 elderly residents of the Burke County Ridge region. One man, Samuel Pitts, age 91, said, "It don't take you the first time, it shows itself. Sees if you look. The second time, if you remember it, that's when it keeps you." England asked what happened if you told someone about it. Pitts replied, "Then it knows your name twice." Marianne's name appears one last time in a 1983 Appalachian registry. A school in Banner Elk enrolled a substitute teacher named Mary H., age unlisted. She taught for 3 days. On her final day, she played a tune on a classroom organ, one the children had never heard before. According to 2 now adult witnesses, the music sounded like light lux when it flickers through leaves. When they asked her the name of the song, she smiled and said, "I heard it a long time ago, but I didn't blink fast enough." She never returned. The school's call to her emergency contact led to a disconnected number. Her teacher file was blank. No fingerprints. No ID, only a single handwritten reference line. She knew how to walk backward without making a sound. The witnesses of Brown Mountain don't scream, they murmur, they draw, they hum, and eventually they vanish. But not before leaving. Some fragment behind, a sound, a phrase, a sketch, something the mountain uses, like bait or warning. We don't know if Marianne Hobbins ever existed, but we know her absence has weight, and we know the lights don't always just take. Sometimes they send something back. If your cousin once disappeared for a night and came back quieter, if your child has ever drawn a shape with no name but couldn't say why, or if you've dreamed of a girl walking without footsteps and woke up humming, tell us, write it below, and subscribe, because the ones who vanish leave pieces behind. And sometimes those pieces hum. There's no shortage of stories in the shadow of Brown Mountain. What's in shorter supply is the paper to prove them. Because stories can be buried in forest soil, but evidence is always burned, or sealed, or lost in a restructuring in end. The case of Brown Mountain, suppression wasn't just an accident. It became protocol. It began in 1943, the same year the 4 Bureau of Mines surveyors vanished. Internal memos show that the Department of the Interior quietly suspended all geological operations in Caldwell County under the classification environmental instability, but that wasn't the official story given to the public. According to a Caldwell County Court summary dated November 29, 1943, the suspension was due to funding issues. Yet the federal budget that year shows a doubling of resource allocations to western North Carolina. The money didn't disappear. it was redirected toward containment, not discovery. A week later, a storage fire erupted in the county records annex, reportedly destroying several volumes of land deeds and school registries from the Timber Hollow region. But former archivist Della Hartsfield, who worked in that annex in the 1950s, gave a taped interview in 1979. She said, "That wasn't a fire, that was a purge. We got new books the next week, already filled in, names I'd never seen, families who'd never been here." The tape was donated to the Burke County Historical Society. It went missing in 1984. No backup exists. Only the typed transcript remains, and the final line is underlined 3 times in red ink. They don't want you to find the children. Suppression wasn't always institutional. Sometimes it was ecclesiastical. In 1955, diocesan liaison J.E. Halbrook issued a sealed memo to 4 churches in Burke and Caldwell counties. The subject line read, Ridge families, anomalous behavior, parish disassociation. The body of the memo, later unearthed by researcher Delia Nguyen during her 2001 thesis work, instructed all church officials to disengage pastoral care from families residing near Timber Hollow and Dunval Ridge, citing undue theological deviation and folk-influenced doctrines not sanctioned by council. In plain terms, excommunicate them without notice, remove their baptisms, cancel their weddings, pretend they were never part of the body. That same year, Mount Gilead Church's remaining congregation, including 3 children under the age of 7, were not allowed burial rites after perishing in a winter house fire. The family graves were unmarked. The death certificates list only disposition, private family land. 2 of those certificates are missing signatures. One is stamped in a faded red seal reading, Lumen classification in process. That stamp appears only 3 other times in North Carolina records, all connected to Brown Mountain in 1968. A reporter named Gerald Eklund began investigating the so-called Brown Mountain lights for a serialized expose in the Times. Eklund had gathered over 24 interviews, teachers, rangers, former church members, many of them elderly and reluctant. He requested land records, visited the Timber Hollow site, pulled copies of the 1913 railroad incident and the 1946 school incident. He had a working draft titled The Ridge That Watches. The series was set to publish in January 1969, but on December 17, 1968, Gerald's cabin burned to the ground. He was inside. The fire marshal's report claimed it started from a lamp cord short, but no electrical devices were found near the source point. His typewriter was recovered, the keys melted. The ribbon inside bore a half-typed sentence. They sing when you remember, not when you believe. His notes gone. The editor who had greenlit the story resigned within the week and moved to Oregon. The Asheville Times never published another word about Brown Mountain. In 1974, Senator Howard Hensley, a North Carolina legislator with deep ties to the mining industry, introduced Bill 803A, proposing reclassification of Brown Mountain as a non-developmental buffer zone, citing unstable terrain and resource redundancy. But buried in the bill's appendix was a single curious phrase: no archaeological surveys are to be conducted on ridge parcels, BJ, unless approved by federal oversight. A young aide flagged the clause during committee review. That aide, Laura Pingree, was let go the following month due to procedural overreach. In a personal letter written to her sister, later posted anonymously online in 2007, she wrote, I wasn't wrong. Something's under that hill, and someone knew long before me. I think the land's already been surveyed, just not by us. In 1981, a public filing error in the Burke County Property Ledger temporarily unsealed a collection of deed transfers connected to the old Dobbins property. 3 parcels, each roughly 18 acres, had changed hands 5 times between 1952 and 1980. But each transaction listed the same witness signature, R. Dobbins, same handwriting, same date format, same looping flourish in the R. For a name last known in 1915, it should have raised alarm. Instead, the records were resealed within 48 hours, citing clerical corruption due to humidity exposure. One local clerk, who insisted on anonymity, remembered seeing the name before in a ledger related to an abandoned child services file from 1949. That file is now sealed under faith-based custodial exceptions. It cannot be requested under FOIA. And then there were the fires. Between 1943 and 1986, Brown Mountain's perimeter saw 6 separate archive storage blazes. 1943, Caldwell County, Annex Field Logs. Land deeds, 1958, Morganton Elementary School, rosters, 1969. County Coroner's Office, autopsy reports. 1972, Appalachian Regional Library, oral history cassettes. 1981, Mount Gilead, remains pulpit storage. 1986, private estate of Amos Vance, historian map collection. None of the fires spread. All consumed only their target structures. The official explanation for each faulty wiring, space heaters, lightning, act of God, no criminal charges, no insurance investigations, and yet, despite all erasure, fragments persist. In margin notes, in misfiled paperwork, in ledger, stamps. There are patterns in the paper, if you know how to read between the singed edges. In 2003, an intern at Western Carolina's anthropology department accidentally uploaded a miscatalogued survey photo. It showed a ridge path near Timber Hollow, dated 1962, in the far right corner. Nearly out of frame, a woman standing still among the trees, holding a child. Both blurred, both strangely tall. No one recalled taking the photo. But metadata revealed something stranger. The image's timestamp included 7 digits, not 6. An impossible error for cameras of that model. The file was removed within 24 hours. This is how silence is shaped. Not with denial, but with repetition of the wrong records. New names replace old ones. New hymns overwrite ancient ones. New deaths mask the ones that never received burial. If the lights of Brown Mountain are a phenomenon, then the systematic effort to unsee them is an institution, one built not by a single agency or office, but by collusion with fear. A town that forgets because it must, a state that erases because it was told to, and a country that can't bear to admit what glows just out of reach. If your family worked in the clerk's office and was told not to file a name, if you've seen the red stamp that said Lumen in a box no one should open, or if you've ever heard your grandmother pause before saying Dobbins and then whisper something else instead, write it below and subscribe, because silence doesn't protect. It only delays the light. At the southern edge of Brown Mountain, where the tree line folds into itself and the trail markers fade to lichen-covered stone, sits the ruin of a house that no one claims, but everyone avoids. Locals call it the Dobbins frame, though no living Dobbins has walked the land since the 1930s. It isn't a home in the traditional sense anymore. just a flawless rectangle of stone, choked in vine, crowned by a bent roof beam that still creaks in windless air. What's unsettling isn't that it's abandoned, it's that it doesn't decay. Photographs taken over a span of 60 years show the same warped frame, same cracks in the cornerstones, same rusted hinges hanging at the same angle. The wood should have collapsed by now, but it hasn't, and the house has been visited. Not often, but enough. And every visitor came back. Different, if they came back at all. 1987, Morris Pennick, amateur photographer. His journal describes the house as silent in a way that presses against your bones. He went alone, following a tip from a local archivist about the Dobbins parcel. Took 3 rolls of black and white film. Upon development, 31 of 36 photos were clear, but 5 were not. 5 negatives, each taken from a different angle around the house, showed a blurred vertical streak of white suspended above the hearthstones. No wind, no light source. When reversed in the dark room, the streak became more distinct. It was shaped like a standing figure. No face, no limbs, just a form. Pennick documented the phenomenon but refused to return. In a taped interview 2 years later, he said, "I kept dreaming of the doorway, not walking into it, but waking up already inside. It wasn't a dream you wake up from. It was the one you wake into." His photography collection was later donated to a historical society. The negatives are kept in a lead-lined box. 1999, Appalachian Paranormal Research Unit. 2 men and 1 woman visited the Dobbins frame as part of a broader series on haunted Appalachian architecture. The project was never completed. The woman, Candice Lewin, resigned 3 months after the visit. When asked why, she said, "We thought the house was empty, but it's not. It's held, it's kept." One of the men, Dr. Ivan Mears, was hospitalized. 6 months later, after experiencing what he described as spatial collapse, the sensation that the walls around me were bending inward, but I wasn't inside them. His field notes, released posthumously in 2011, include a crude sketch of the house's interior as he perceived it. No windows, ceiling too high for the frame, a door frame that loops. Entering it leads back into itself. The final note in his journal reads, "The light doesn't move. You do. It just waits for the version of you that fits." He died in his sleep in 2004. His body was found facing west, eyes open, no sign of distress. 2006, Forest Service GPS tagging project. A 3-man crew was assigned to mark trails and boundaries along the Timber Hollow slope. One of them, Craig Simmons, logged an anomaly in the field tablet, stepped into old structure. GPS began looping. Time read out reverted to 1974. Device froze. Audio feedback in headset sounded like someone repeating my steps behind me, but faster. The file corrupted upon upload. His crew found him 2 hours later, standing in the threshold of the house, holding his device upside down. He was humming. When asked what he remembered, he said, "I was only there for a minute." But his watch had stopped for 2 hours. There are many ways to describe the house: a ruin, a shell, a memory with edges. But the most honest one came from a 10-year-old boy who wandered onto the property in 1976 while camping with his father. The boy, now a 57-year-old man named Raymond Collister, described what he saw to a documentary team in 2014. It didn't want to be looked at, you know. It was a house, but backward. Like the door didn't let you in, it let something out. My dad never wanted to talk about it again. He threw the camera into the river the same night. Raymond's father died in 1982. In his will, he wrote, "A single line under possessions of note, nothing from the ridge. But if the structure resists documentation, the land beneath it is even more resistant." Soil samples taken in 2006 returned with abnormally high magnetic resonance. No known minerals were found, but every compass placed on the ground spun slowly. Counter-clockwise, a drone pass in 2019 caught a faint thermal signature, a dull ring of heat, 10 feet in diameter, surrounding the hearth. The air temperature was 46 degrees Fahrenheit. The ring, 104 degrees Fahrenheit. That same drone lost signal for minutes later and crashed. The footage was recovered. The last frame shows a shadow inside the hearth, humanoid, but upside down. No person was present. Paranormal. Researchers often refer to thin places, sites where the boundary between this world and another is worn, frayed. But the Dobbins frame isn't thin, it's tight. Something there wants to hold, to fit you into the space it remembers, or worse, to keep you until someone else fits your place better. It's as if the house isn't haunted by a spirit, but by a memory that doesn't want to end. And anyone who walks through the doorway must either replay the moment or become the next one. The Dobbins never left. They just folded into the floorboards, and the house kept them, because the mountain remembers what it's given, theirs. A story unconfirmed but oft repeated that in 1985, a group of high school kids broke into the house on a dare. One girl ran back out, screaming. The others didn't speak for weeks. When asked what they saw, the girl only said, "It wasn't the house, it was me, watching from inside it." No names are ever given, but the story has details that only someone who's been there would know, and the same 3-ringed eye symbol, etched in stone beside the hearth, keeps appearing in graffiti across the county, drawn by people who swear they've never been there. It doesn't fade, and moss won't grow over it. If your father forbade you from walking past mile marker 9B without saying why, if your dreams include a fireplace with no fire, but a humming sound that gets louder the longer you stand still, or if you've ever stepped inside a ruin and felt like your shadow stayed behind, tell us, write it below, and subscribe, because some houses were built to remember you, and some already do. They say Appalachia holds secrets in its soil, that the hollers and ridgelines whisper in their own time. But the deeper you dig, the more it becomes clear. What happened to the Dobbins wasn't isolated. Brown Mountain didn't take just one family. It took pieces from many. The Cotars, the Fairchilds, the Holloways, the Givens. Their names flicker in and out of public record like shadows under leaf light, present in school rosters and baptism registries, only to vanish mid-decade. The same years, the same signs, the same symbols, one family at a time, one generation. Per cycle, start with the Givens. In 1906, Reverend Alton Givens established a farmstead just outside Jonas Ridge. By 1913, he had 4 children. Only one of them, Clara Givens, reached adulthood. The others, no death certificates, no burial plots. Only this entry, handwritten in the 1915 St. Elora ledger under children's ministry, returned early. All 3. One blinked too late. Clara herself disappeared in 1924. Her last known photograph shows her standing in front of an empty cabin near Brown Mountain's edge. She is holding a doll with no eyes and wearing a dress stitched with 7 concentric rings. The back of the Photo reads, "For mother, he's kind when you don't talk." Then there's the Fairchild line. According to the 1931 Banner Elk census, 6 Fairchild children were enrolled at the mountain school. But by 1936, their names are missing. Instead, 6 other students are listed, all with the last name McNally, all with birth dates exactly 1 day later than the original Fairchilds. Their penmanship on school assignments is identical, same slant, same spacing, same misspellings. But when interviewed decades later, surviving classmates said they weren't the same after October. They sat too still, and they never blinked together. The Coulters, too, show the pattern, though theirs is preserved in sacred text. In 1952, an itinerant preacher passing through Avery County acquired a hymnal once used at Mount Gilead. Inside were notes from a deaconess named Lydia Coulter, documenting which children responded during viewing nights. Her entries: "Young Martha saw the glow, walked toward it without prompting. Simon stood inside the ring, sang without being taught. Eldest daughter tried to look away. Will need to sleep deeper next time." This was not worship. This was record keeping. The Coulter family farm was later sold to a shell company in 1964. The deed's witness signature reads, "R. Dobbins," again, same hand, same looped R. But the most haunting link, the one that ties them all, is what the children left behind in 1981. A substitute teacher at a rural school in Morganton collected a set of free draw assignments from her 3rd grade class. Among 22 submissions, 6 children drew the same shape, a triangle containing 3 circles, one filled with flame, one with an eye, and one blacked out entirely. When asked what it meant, one boy said, "It's where the light goes to think." Another child added, "My grandma said we shouldn't remember it, but we do." The teacher filed an internal report. She was dismissed by the end of the semester. The drawings were lost, but a photograph of the stack survives, and the children's names: Holloway, Fairchild, Givens, McNally. The names rotate, the counties shift, but the signs are always the same. Children who hum songs they've never heard, birth records that list no attending physician, baptisms conducted without clergy present, only witnessed, fireplaces found warm in abandoned homes, eyes drawn in notebooks, always groups of 3, never facing the same direction, and then, most chilling, the return drawings. Sketches made after something happened. Archivist Tamara Quayle, who catalogued rural school materials for the State Historical Division in the 1990s, noted that in 8 separate schools spanning a 50-mile radius, she found identical compositions, drawn by children after unexplained absences. A cabin with no roofé tree, with hands instead of branches, and a sun hovering below the horizon as if rising into the earth. The children who drew these pictures often transferred schools or were withdrawn by their families. No explanations given. No further records filed. One story stands out. 1973 Avery County time capsule event to celebrate the founding of their school. The community buried a time capsule with student contributions. It was dug up in 2003, 30 years later. Inside, artwork, letters, newspaper clippings, and one unlabeled box wrapped in waxed canvas. Inside the box, 7 smooth river stones arranged in a ringleader skull, carved with the triangle and rings motif, a child's glove with all fingers sealed. Should they note that read, "We lit the mountain, and it lit back. Please forget us." No child admitted to placing the box in the capsule. It is now kept at the Burke County Museum under a false accession number, BGN 717NI. It is listed as unclaimed folkloric artifact, but according to curator emails leaked in 2021, the object emits low-grade M pulses and causes dreams in adjacent storage staff. Patterns only matter if someone notices them, and for decades, someone has. In 1992, a private memo from the North Carolina Department of Child Services proposed a unified database for regional anomalies, including unmatched handwriting. Across student files, repeat signatures from deceased witnesses. Ritualized song behavior among early grade students. The proposal was shut down, but the working draft still exists. Section 7 is titled Legacy Families, Genealogical Tethering to Ridge Sites. The draft ends with a warning. We believe these events are not isolated phenomena, but part of an inherited ritual, unconscious, undocumented, but dangerously persistent. If it were one family, you could call it tragedy. If it were two, maybe superstition. But 4, 8, over 100 years, that's not folklore, that's design. Someone or something has been running a pattern through generations. Families, caught in its pulse. Children raised just close enough to hear the hum, to feel the glow under their skin before they learn to speak. And the moment they remember what they never knew, they're marked, not cursed, just chosen. Again, if your family tree has a branch that ends abruptly in 1911, if your child once hummed a tune and then said, "Grandma taught me," but grandma's been gone 20 years, or if your surname shows up in documents you've never signed, in places you've never lived, tell us, write it below. You'd think a story like this would die with paper, that once the ledgers were burned, the hymnals buried, and the witnesses silenced, the mountain would sleep. But it hasn't. It's stirring again. Not in official channels, those are still silent, but in status updates, forum threads, and quiet posts on forgotten message boards. The names are newer, the medium's digital, but the tone unmistakable. October 12, 1999, Boone County Sheriff's Log. Case number 99101 for BA call from a woman, age 32, mother of one. She reported her child had been drawing symbols in chalk on the basement floor, a circle of eyes, no pupils, and had started humming a tune he refused to stop. Her words, he said the tune helps him remember the mountain before he was born. When she tried to correct him, he covered his ears and said, "You're not the real mum. You're the one after." Police arrived to find the symbols washed away. The child silent. No report filed. Just a memo in the margin. Unsubstantiated concern. Mother advised arrest. August 2005. Forum thread on Appalachian Lawnet now. Defunct username. Pinneglass 43 post title. Is this a common dream? I've had it 5 times now. A woman standing in a doorway with no house behind her. She's humming, but the sound comes from the trees. I walk toward her and she holds out a mirror. But it doesn't show me. It shows a fireplace. One I've never seen, but no, I've stood in. My grandmother used to say, "Never walk toward a song you don't remember learning." I never knew what that meant. Thread had 14 replies before deletion. Moderator cited persistent user distress. The thread was reposted 6 months later under a new name, Where the Song Waits for the Throat. July 2012. Private Facebook group, Mothers of Western NC. Post by Angela C., now deleted. My daughter came home from pre-K and asked if she used to be named Fairchild. That's not our name. We've never spoken it. She says she wrote it before when she was under the light inside the tree. When I asked what tree, she said the one that used to be a window. Another mother responded, mine too. She draws the same 3 rings over and over. She says the last one is for the part we forgot on purpose. The thread was removed within 24 hours. Angela's account no longer exists. March 2017, Reddit per r, glitch in the matrix. Post by user Hollowvale93. Wife found an old photo in her late grandfather's attic. Shows for children in a field with arms linked. One of them is my son, down to the freckle. But it's dated 1956, and I wasn't born until 1988. He swears he doesn't recognize it. But when we showed it to him, he got quiet and said, "This is the field with the soft voice. It used to be louder." The post received over 3,000 upvotes. 2 weeks later, user account deleted. Archived copy stored under thread title, "My son blinked at the wrong time." April 2019, Morganton Elementary incident. A kindergarten teacher submitted a behavior log after 6 students began swaying in unison during nap time. No music was playing. The children were spaced apart. None of them remembered doing it. One child, when asked why they were moving, replied, "That's how the mountain breathes." The administration conducted a psychological screening. No cause found, but in a security cam frame from the nap room, 3:16 p.m., the windows show a faint, blurred glow. 3 distinct pulses. No sunlight entered the room at that hour. October 2020. TikTok account at Ridgewalker71, video titled, "Found a stone ring on the ridge, not going near it." Short clip shows a perfect circle of mossler stones with a child's mitten in the center. Audio includes a faint whistling, too soft to be wind. Caption, "Smells like milk and old wood up here. Not going back." Video received 120,000 views before being taken down. Account went private 2 days later. Final video description read, "If I see it again, I won't remember this post." That's how it works, I think. And now, law enforcement is taking notice. But not the way you'd hope. A leaked memo from the Burke County Sheriff's Office, dated November 3rd, 2021, includes the following directives. Refrain from escalating any non-violent reports related to lights, humming, or unidentified symbols. Redirect witnesses to mental health crisis lines. Do not use the term Brown Mountain in official communications. The memo ends with, "Containment depends on discouraging pattern awareness. Keep reports isolated." In other words, they know. They've seen it again. But the official strategy is the same as it ever was. Deny, redirect, forget. But you can't erase the internet. Not completely. Some of the stories keep resurfacing, reposted, reworded, reshared, and now they come with photos, with field audio, with maps that show the same symbol scratched into hiking trail markers, maps that show rings of stones, in new places, in Tennessee, in Georgia, in Southern Virginia. The lights aren't just coming back, they're spreading. Which brings us to the most recent case. May 2023, Asheville, NCA, family moved into a newly built home along the base of the old Timber Hollow Road. 3 weeks in, their 6-year-old son began humming at night. The father recorded it, posted it on SoundCloud under the file name. He said, "The mountain sings first." The hum is faint, repeating in a slow 3-beat pattern. Audio spectrograph reveals a mirrored waveform, something that's only possible with intentional design. Then it gets worse. At exactly 3 minutes, 21 seconds, the time stamp from the 1943 Dobbins Field notebook, a second voice enters. Not the boy, not the parents. A voice layered beneath the hum, whispering, one blink, then return. The file was deleted. But not before someone downloaded it. It's been copied, shared, sent to researchers, and to us. What's returning isn't just the light. It's the ritual, the memory structure built from generations of silence. The patterns we were told to forget are finding new mouths, new fingers, new songs. Brown Mountain doesn't need belief. It only needs recognition. And now that the hum is in our data, our screens, our ears, it doesn't need the mountain anymore. It's in us. If your phone's camera glitched while hiking, if your child hums a song at 3:21 a.m. and says it helps them remember the warmth, or if your dreams have grown brighter and you can't tell where the light's coming from, tell us, write it below, and subscribe, because this time the lights don't need to be chased. They're already here. You'd think a story like this would die with paper, that once the ledgers were burned, the hymnals buried, and the witnesses silenced, the mountain would sleep. But it hasn't. It's stirring again. Not in official channels. Those are still silent, but in status updates, forum threads, and quiet posts on forgotten message boards. The names are newer, the medium's digital, but the tone unmistakable. October 12, 1999, Boone County Sheriff's Log. Case number 99101 for BA call from a woman, age 32, mother of one. She reported her child had been drawing symbols in chalk on the basement floor, a circle of eyes, no pupils, and had started humming a tune he refused to stop. Her words, he said the tune helps him remember the mountain before he was born. When she tried to correct him, he covered his ears and said, "You're not the real mum. You're the one after." Police arrived to find the symbols washed away, the child silent, no report filed. Just a memo in the margin, unsubstantiated concern. Mother advised to rest. August 2005, forum thread on Appalachian Lawnet now. Defunct username, Pinneglass 43 post title. Is this a common dream? I've had it 5 times now. A woman standing in a doorway with no house behind her. She's humming, but the sound comes from the trees. I walk toward her and she holds out a mirror, but it doesn't show me. It shows a fireplace. One I've never seen, but no, I've stood in. My grandmother used to say, "Never walk toward a song you don't remember learning." I never knew what that meant. Thread had 14 replies before deletion. Moderator cited persistent user distress. The thread was reposted 6 months later under a new name, Where the Song Waits for the Throat. July 2012, private Facebook group Mothers of Western NC post by Angela C., now deleted. My daughter came home from pre-K and asked if she used to be named Fairchild. That's not our name. We've never spoken it. She says she wrote it before when she was under the light inside the tree. When I asked what tree, she said the one that used to be a window. Another mother responded, "Mine too." She draws the same 3 rings over and over. She says the last one is for the part we forgot on purpose. The thread was removed within 24 hours. Angela's account no longer exists. March 2017, Reddit per R. Glitch in the Whitex. Post by user HollowVale93. Wife found an old photo in her late grandfather's attic. shows for children in a field with arms linked. One of them is my son, down to the freckle. But it's dated 1956, and I wasn't born until 1988. He swears he doesn't recognize it. But when we showed it to him, he got quiet and said, "This is the field with the soft voice. It used to be louder." The post received over 3,000 upvotes. 2 weeks later, user account deleted. Archived copy stored under thread title, "My son blinked at the wrong time." April 2019, Morganton Elementary incident. A kindergarten teacher submitted a behavior log after 6 students began swaying in unison during nap time. No music was playing. The children were spaced apart. None of them remembered doing it. One child, when asked why they were moving, replied, "That's how the mountain breathes." The administration conducted a psychological screening. No cause found, but in a security cam frame from the nap room, 3:16 p.m., the windows show a faint, blurred glow, 3 distinct pulses. No sunlight entered the room at that hour. October 2020, TikTok account at Ridgewalker71 video titled, "Found a stone ring on the ridge. Not going near it." Short clip shows a perfect circle of monster stones, with a child's mitten in the center. Audio includes a faint whistling, too soft to be wind. Caption, "Smells like milk and old wood up here. Not going back." Video received 120,000 views before being taken down. Account went private 2 days later. Final video description read, "If I see it again, I won't remember this post. That's how it works, I think. And now, law enforcement is taking notice, but not the way you'd hope." A leaked memo from the Burke County Sheriff's Office, dated November 3rd, 2021, includes the following directives. Refrain from escalating any non-violent reports related to lights, humming, or unidentified symbols. Redirect witnesses to mental health crisis lines. Do not use the term Brown Mountain in official communications. The memo ends with, "Containment depends on discouraging pattern awareness. Keep reports isolated." In other words, they know. They've seen it again. But the official strategy is the same as it ever was. Deny, redirect, forget, but you can't erase the internet. Not completely. Some of the stories keep resurfacing, reposted, reworded, reshared, and now they come with photos, with field audio, with maps that show the same symbol scratched into hiking trail markers. Maps that show rings of stones, in new places, in Tennessee, in Georgia, in Southern Virginia. The lights aren't just coming back, they're spreading. Which brings us to the most recent case, May 2023, Asheville. NCA family moved into a newly built home along the base of the old Timber Hollow Road. 3 weeks in, their 6-year-old son began humming at night. The father recorded it, posted it on SoundCloud under the file name. He said the mountain sings first. The hum is faint, repeating in a slow 3-beat pattern. Audio spectrograph reveals a mirrored waveform, something that's only possible with intentional design. Then it gets worse. At exactly 3 minutes, 21 seconds, the time stamp from the 1943 Dobbins Field notebook, a second voice enters. Not the boy, not the parents. A voice layered beneath the hum, whispering, "1 blink. Then return." The file was deleted. But not before someone downloaded it. It's been copied, shared, sent to researchers, and to us. What's returning isn't just the light. It's the ritual. The memory structure built from generations of silence. The patterns we were told to forget are finding new mouths, new fingers. New songs. Brown Mountain doesn't need belief. It only needs recognition. And now that the hum is in our data, our screens, our ears, it doesn't need the mountain anymore. It's in us. If your phone's camera glitched while hiking, if your child hums a song at 3:21 a.m. and says it helps them remember the warm, or if your dreams have grown brighter and you can't tell where the light's coming from, tell us. Write it below and subscribe, because this time the lights don't need to be chased. They're already here. If you want to disappear someone in Appalachia, you don't dig a hole. You add their name where it shouldn't be. You move it sideways in the record, not gone, just miswild. And Brown Mountain has done this again and again. But one name keeps coming back, over decades, across counties, through signatures, witness lines, and untraceable log entries. Always the same hand, always the same curl on the capital R, are Dobbins. Let's start with 1911. That year, a deed transfer was filed in Caldwell County, Ridge Parcel 7B. Transfer of ownership from Elmira, Dobbins' mother of 8. Missing by 1915 to 1R. Dobbins, no first name, no age, no relation listed. Signature recorded, tight script, hard-pressed ink, slight rightward slant. Filed and approved within 48 hours. Unusual for the time. The parcel was never developed. Still sits in state records as privately owned. No owner of record. Still receives a tax renewal every 5 years. Each one signed again by R. Dobbins. Fast forward to 1936. Burke County Courthouse, birth certificate backlog review. An audit uncovers 11 certificates from 1933 to 1935 with identical witness signatures. Different towns, different midwives, all logged under rural home birth exemption. All witnessed by R. Dobbins when questioned. None of the delivering doctors recall anyone by that name. In 3 cases, the birth was logged before the family had even moved to the county. One child, Thomas Fairchild, was later institutionalized for drawing doors inside trees. His file is sealed. His attending physician, Dr. Walter Cray, the same man who treated Marianne Hobbins in 1961. Then there's 1979, a zoning meeting in Avery County to approve development permits on old timber tracts. One tract, Parcel 119C, includes a cabin ruin known locally as the Smiling House. Witness on the deed, R. Dobbins. Again, same signature, same ink pressure, same strange curl on the R. The county clerk flagged it, but within 48 hours, the form was replaced by a clean digital copy. The physical version, lost. The clerk, resigned, moved to Idaho. In a letter to a friend later donated to a regional archive, he wrote, "It wasn't just the signature. It was the way it felt, like the pen had written itself." Most recently, and perhaps most disturbingly, the name appeared in a 2007 notary filing in Burke County, authorizing transfer of an abandoned structure on Timber Hollow Ridge 4. Historical preservation. The notary signature, R. Dobbins, filed under a temporary license code that no longer exists. When state archives were contacted, they claimed no record of that name in notary rolls dating back to 1975, but the signature is preserved in scan. Handwriting analysts hired in 2011 by an independent documentary team concluded it's the same hand across 96 years. No age-related changes, no tremor, no stylistic evolution. If forged, it is a perfect simulation, something we've never seen at this scale. They filed a report. 2 weeks later, their project was cancelled. Funding withdrawn. Footage seized under public safety non-compliance. The team disbanded. One member now lives off-grid. In her last blog post, she wrote, "The name isn't a person, it's an entry point. What happens when you say it? What happens when the name echoes?" In 2020, an archivist named Leland Reese gave a podcast interview for a small Appalachian folklore series. He'd spent the last 10 years compiling irregular census records from Timber Hollow and Jonas Ridge. During the interview, he mentioned, "There's a name that keeps returning in places it doesn't belong. Dobbins. It doesn't matter what year you're in. He's already signed it." That episode was pulled within 48 hours. Reese passed away 1 month later, brain hemorrhage, with no medical history. His hard drive was recovered. The last document he edited is still intact. It contains one sentence, copied over and over, "Speak." It and the record rewrites. And it isn't just officials. The name has crept into the mouths of children. In 2015, a teacher in Marion, NC reported a 5th grade boy who referred to Mr. Dobbins during a creative writing exercise. Prompt: describe someone who changed your life. His answer: he sings under the floor. He taught me how to draw my real name. I didn't remember it before. The child had no known contact with Appalachian folklore, had never been to Brown Mountain. But his drawing at the bottom of the page showed a house made of rings with a single eye above the door. The assignment was filed, then mysteriously lost. But a cell phone photo was taken by a student aide. The file name, r_dobbins_teachers_me.png. The teacher moved states 6 months later. Cited recurring nightmares. In a comment thread from a teaching forum, she wrote, "I don't think he invented the name. I think he remembered it. This is what Brown Mountain does best. It doesn't erase the past. It rewrites it. It inserts its own footnotes, stamps, its own initials on the corners of birth, death, and purchase, until history folds into something it authored. We used to think stories needed to be told to live, but the Dobbins name lives whether or not it's spoken, because the mountain has given it a job, to keep the record from closing, to sign what others won't, to witness what others deny. In a digital age, you'd think we'd be immune, that databases and cloud storage and keylogs would protect us. But in 2023, a data analyst running an AI model for handwriting recognition encountered a strange glitch. Every 7th sample, no matter what it was supposed to show, rendered the same. Result: R. Dobbins, neatly typed. Centered in the model output, he logged the anomaly and retried. Same result, then the software crashed. He later wrote in a private Discord server, "It felt like the dataset wanted to be found, like it was waiting for the right name." The model never worked again. The project was abandoned. The line of code that caused the error, unnamed, auto-generated, filed under entry witness. Names hold power, and sometimes a name is more than a person. It's a doorway, a permission slip, a stamp that says, "This has been seen." The more we say it, the more it moves. Across paper, across decades, into your logs, into your child's tongue, until it's everywhere, and no longer just a name, it's the author. If your school project once came back with a name you didn't write, if your old family Bible has an unfamiliar signature tucked in the margin, or if you've ever dreamt of writing a name over one you didn't know before, but now can't forget, tell us. Write it below. On November 17th, 1943, in the wooded cradle between Caldwell and Burke counties. 4 men vanished under a sky they had studied for years. Their assignment was simple: charting mineral lines for the Bureau of Mines along the eastern slope of Brown Mountain. It was a region, long whispered about but rarely logged, a seam of quartz and coal that resisted industry as if the mountain itself rejected intrusion. The men were professionals, surveyors trained to interpret rock, soil, and flame, but that night their instruments failed them, and the mountain didn't blink. Their names are buried deep in redacted case files. Thomas Gentry, age 32, Willard Hayes, 29, Curtis Fielding, 41, and Marcus Elgin, 27. All 4 signed in at the field post just after noon that day. According to dispatch logs recovered in a partially declassified 1951 memo, their gear included 2 geodolites, a barometer case, 3 packs of government rations, and a Kodak folding camera. They pitched camp near Timber Hollow, just below Ridge Marker 1 to C. When the recovery team arrived 3 days later, they found everything intact. The canvas tents were zipped, the logs unsplit, and the notepad left open beside the untouched fire pit. The camera film had melted within its casing. The emulsion bubbled like burned flesh. Their field notebook, mostly routine entries, ended abruptly at a time stamp, 3:21 a.m. The last words read, "Light is back, it's closer." In the left-hand margin, scrawled in a different ink and unsteady hand, was a sentence no one officially acknowledged. No sound, just heat, we can't move. No footprints led away from the site. No blood, no signs of wildlife disturbance. It was as if the men had simply ceased. Their families received settlement checks from the Department of Interior within 8 weeks. An unusually short window for disappearances that had not been ruled dead. There were no public notices, no obituaries, and no follow-up interviews. Only one note appears in the Caldwell County Sheriff's log under November 23, 1943. Do not refer to mountain case. Let Bureau handle. The page is marked with a handwritten X. No signature. Brown Mountain had long held secrets, but few made it to paper. The earliest recorded mention of the lights came in 1834, when a Methodist circuit preacher described glowing torches, floating above the ridge like watchmen from another shore. In 1913, the Charlotte Observer ran a brief, unexplained article titled, "Phantom Lights Continue to Puzzle Campers." And in 1922, the U.S. Geological Survey dismissed the phenomenon as refracted headlights, despite no major road existing within 10 miles at the time. But the 1943 disappearances were different. This time, the federal government got involved, and this time they covered it up. A declassified Bureau of Mines Archive document ID 11F277B revealed that between 1941 and 1945, Brown Mountain was tagged for magnetic irregularities. Survey teams were rotated every 2 weeks. Crews were never repeated. And in the final footnote of the last report, dated December 1943, a single cryptic instruction appears. Seal per Project Lumen, reassign coordinates as unfit. No press. The phrase Project Lumen doesn't exist in any official Bureau registry, but the stamp appears again, faint and blood orange. In 2 other locations, a 1957 geological anomaly report from Virginia's Cold Ridge Caverns and a 1965 FAA flight path reroute form, both dealing with unexplained light interference. This isn't folklore. This is an erased incident. And yet, Even with all the documentation, all the classified seals and ghosted names, nothing captures the wrongness like what came next in 1959. A land auction in Boone included a property described as rich. The winning bidder, a man named Ira Cornwell, took possession in July and went to inspect the parcel. He returned 2 days later, refusing to speak. His wife filed a missing persons report within the week, not for him, but for their dog. She claimed that the animal walked into the trees ahead of them and melted. That was her word. Melted. Her statement was dismissed, the case closed. But what she said next, in a letter to her cousin found years later in a family Bible, reads, "It wasn't the heat. It was the memory of heat. You feel it in your throat before you feel it in your skin. The question remains, is it atmospheric distortion, some fluke of Appalachian magnetism that makes lights dance where they shouldn't? Or is it something else, something that takes, not burns, something that listens?" The tape reels from the 1943 field post were recovered in 1973, mistakenly sent to a university archives in Asheville. The audio was damaged, but one segment, time-stamped at 3:14 a.m., contained what sound analysts now call a tonal void. A dip in frequency followed by 7 rhythmic pulses, like distant bells ringing underwater. Then silence. Some researchers dismiss it. Others note that 7 is the number of survey markers recorded by Fielding on his first night, the last of which, marker 7B, was drawn beside a tiny sketch of a flame. The original sketch was removed from the archives in 1991. The copy is all that remains. There are locals who still won't walk near the slope. Not because of what they've seen, but because of what they've stopped seeing. "No birds there," said Lena Hartsfield, age 83, in a 1961 interview with the McDowell Gazette. "No deer, no owls, just still air, like it's listening." Lena's brother Otis was a fire ranger stationed near Brown Mountain in the 1940s. His journal, now stored in the Burke County Historical Society vault, contains only 3 entries for November 1943. The last one, dated the 18th, reads, "Flashes near ridge again. Red and white. 1 long, 2 short. Smells like ozone and milk. Going to check. If I don't write again, don't dig here. Just leave it. Let it blink alone." Otis never returned to his post. No body was found, but a half-page letter arrived at the ranger station 10 days later with no return address. The envelope had no stamp. The message was handwritten in childlike script. He blinked back. "That's not allowed. There are stories buried in North Carolina's western ridges, stories that never made it past the porch, stories whispered over coffee cups and passed like sacred curses through families who don't dare say them too loud. And Brown Mountain is full of them. Today, hikers still report lights, orbs, rising and falling in patterns, sometimes pulsing, sometimes dancing, sometimes disappearing. When looked at directly, scientific studies still propose atmospheric explanations, car lights, swamp gas, moon refraction. But none of those explain the missing men, the sealed files, or the sound recordings that fade out with silence so loud it hurts. So we ask again, is the light a trick of the atmosphere, or the last flicker of someone being erased? If your family ever warned you not to go near Brown Mountain at night, if you've seen a light with no source, or if an old photograph in your attic glows when it shouldn't, tell us. Let the record reopen, and subscribe, because this story was meant to stay lost. There's a spot on the western edge of Caldwell County where the air thins in a way You don't quite notice until you've already gone too far. The trees grow differently there, too straight, too quiet, like they're trying not to draw attention to themselves. Cartographers once tried to tame the shape of the land with lines and markers. Its spine runs jagged and dismissive, cutting through Burke County like a scar that won't close. What we now call Brown Mountain was for centuries known by many other names. To the Cherokee, it was Tanasi, US Galvi, the place where the light sits and watches. Early settler maps from the 1700s labeled the area simply no residence, and for most of the 20th century, US Geological Survey files quietly designated this zone as Class D, unfit for development. Yet people tried, and sometimes they stayed. Between 1887 and 1929, 4 separate communities sprang up along the base of Brown Mountain's east and south-facing slopes: Perkins Hollow, Larkspur Mill, Dunn Valley, and Ridge Fork. You won't find them on most maps now. Their names were quietly scrubbed during the 1963 North Carolina Township reclassification. But property records, if you know where to look, still whisper. A 1924 land tax ledger lists 78 structures in Perkins Hollow. By 1940, only 12 remained standing. The official cause: river corrosion and wind damage. Locals, however, tell a different story of livestock found in tight circles, of wells turning black, of children who began speaking in songs they didn't know. Dunn Valley was perhaps the most ambitious of these vanished towns. Founded in 1909 by lumber prospectors from Tennessee, the town was built around a single-track rail spur meant to transport timber down the mountain. But within 5 years, the timber line dried up, the sawmill closed, and something peculiar began happening. Lights dot the town's lone schoolhouse, St. Orbs, filed repeated reports between 1914 and 1917 describing evening interruptions. A teacher's journal recovered in 1981 from a flooded basement reads, "Children distracted. Windows brighten with light, white-blue, pulsing, as if breathing. No known source. When we close shutters, the air inside grows hotter. Parents pulled children from school. The town's pastor, Reverend Joseph Meeks, held outdoor exorcisms. The town doctor, Dr. Wyman Holtz, recorded 13 cases of sudden muteness, all children under 10. By 1918, the rail spur was decommissioned. The following year, Dunn Valley no longer received mail. Today, all that remains is the bell from St. Elora's. Tower cracked in half, displayed in the lobby of the Morganton History Center. It's labeled simply, "Recovered from private land, 1957, donor unknown." What links these 4 vanished towns is not just proximity to Brown Mountain. It's silence. Silence from the state, silence from historians, and silence from the land itself. In a 1967 paper presented to the Appalachian Anthropological Society, folklorist Dr. Bernadette Lynn argued that Brown Mountain's history was not one of abandonment, but extraction, not of minerals or timber, but of memory. She wrote, "Communities that form near the mountain are unmade not by time, but by forgetting. Their documents vanish. Their dead are not listed. Their names dissolve. It is as if the ridge breathes them in and never exhales." Dr. Lynn disappeared in 1971. Her last known fieldwork log ends with a sketch of a flame above the tree line. It is nearly identical to the symbol found in Marcus Elgin's 1943 survey notebook, the last artifact recovered before the Bureau closed the site of the 4 vanished towns. Only Ridge Fork left behind a cemetery, or at least the suggestion. of one, located roughly 1.5 miles northeast of Timber Hollow. The site contains 17 headstones, all blank. No names, no dates, just worn slate slabs facing west. The cemetery has no formal name, but locals refer to it as the Backward Place. What's most unusual isn't the lack of inscriptions, it's the vegetation. Moss does not grow there, snow does not settle there, and every stone casts a shadow in the wrong direction, no matter the time of day. In 2004, a soil analysis team from Appalachian State University attempted to take core samples. Their equipment failed. The team's final report, quietly shelved, notes an unidentifiable mineral presence inconsistent with surface rock formations. No follow-up study was approved. There's another pattern buried in these town records. Not just who lived there, but what happened to the land after they were gone. According to Burke County Register of Deeds Parcel History 431B through 437H, most of the abandoned properties near Brown Mountain were purchased between 1952 and 1958 by a shell company called Glenvale Holdings. That company does not appear in any other county or state business directory. Its address on file leads to a post office box in Charlotte that was deactivated in 1961. Ownership then passed to another entity, Lumen Enterprises, the same name that appeared in the 1943 Bureau of Mines memo tied to Project Lumen, the one that sealed the disappearance of 4 men under a sky that had no right to be lit. By the time the Brown Mountain Ridge was designated a protected wilderness area in 1975, nearly all physical traces of Perkins Hollow, Larkspur, Mill, Dune Valley, and Ridge Fork had vanished. The trails are overgrown. The wells are filled with stone. The stories are brittle, surviving only in letters never sent and cassette tapes left running too long. But one document did survive, a map recovered from the estate of Caldwell County historian Amos Vance. The hand-drawn map charts Old Town borders with unusual precision, but in the lower corner, beneath the markings for Ridge Fork, a single line is circled in red ink where the lights sleep. No coordinates, no scale, just those 4 words. So what is Brown Mountain, really? A ridge, a magnet anomaly, a graveyard of lost towns. Perhaps it's something older than all of that, a kind of forgetting made physical. A blind spot in the map of history where silence becomes gravity. If you drive along Highway 181 today, you might see the Overlook, a place where tourists stop to photograph the landscape and occasionally glimpse strange flickers above the trees. Some bring binoculars, some bring tripods, most bring expectations, but they never go into the woods. Not really. Not past the line where the gravel ends and the air stops moving. Because the ones who do, the ones who try to trace the borders of these vanished towns, don't come back with stories. They come back with gaps. Gaps in time, in memory, in self. If your grandfather ever pointed to a ridge and called it something you've never seen on a map, if your family photo album includes cabins no one remembers building, or if you've walked a trail that wasn't there when you turned around, tell us. Let the record be redrawn. And subscribe, because names are vanishing, and you might be next.